Kyle, the big fella, Nick Nurse talking about Joel Embiid. And yesterday, since we didn't have a chance to speak to you guys about what was said at Media Day, and you shared some things on Twitter as you guys were en route. But one of the things that Joel talked about was the fact that he lost 25 to 30 pounds. And it was something that he texted to Daryl Morey after the season and saying, I have to be better, I will be better, and I will get right, and I have to do everything to do so. One of those things was to start off by shedding some of those pounds. Maybe nothing, maybe something. We've been talking about his weight for years. But with it, also the start of training camp and how Nick Nurse decides he wants to use him from the very start and getting things going, ramping him up for the beginning of training camp. And he had some interesting things to say about Joel and his workload today.
Yeah, so for anybody who might have missed it on social, we did update the good people who watch this show and follow us that Joel was an active participant in everything up till they scrimmaged, and Joel, along with Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry, did not participate in the scrimmage. And we actually, and whether the media will follow this request from Nick Nurse is up for debate. Nick Nurse actually requested that the rest of the week we don't spend it on what is so and so doing, because it is just day one and week one of a long marathon, right? But the reason that I wanted to get a sense of what they're doing with Joel from day one is that it is a sort of thin line they have to walk, right? Where there are lots of questions always about Joel's conditioning and his health, and how much can you get out of him? How hard do you push him day to day without risking or like overly risking him due to injury? And on the other side of it is, can you keep him in consistently great shape in order to be the best player that he can be? So there is a little bit of how hard is too hard and all that. But after what we heard about Joel losing weight, you guys know I've said on the show that I wanted to see him slim down and, just cut down on the weight that he's carrying for his lower extremities. So I was thrilled to hear that. The other thing that this is more, I take him at his word on the weight, right? Where I'm a little more, I raise an eyebrow and I say, hey, let's wait and see what happens there, was the claim that he made that almost going to step aside for Tyrese to take the reins and take the lead of this team, right? Which is one of those things that sounds great on media day. It's one of those things that I believe in the sense that I think Joel wants to do what's best to win, right? Like I think in his heart of hearts, as I've said many times, I believe he wants to win above all else. The question is whether in the heat of the moments, when you get into these big games and big situations, if what Joel thinks is best to win is stepping aside, or more likely, if Joel Embiid thinks the best way to try to win is falling on his sword, or I shouldn't say falling on his sword, but going out on his own sword and trying to carry the team as team's best player, right? So that I think is something that sounds nice to all of us right now. And I think for the people who believe Maxey is the future, that's red meat for them, right? And there are plenty of those people around the city for good reason. But we have to wait and see. And so I'm really interested to see, once we get to see more live action, once the preseason starts, and TBD if Joel is going to play in any preseason games quite yet. Nick Nurse would not commit on that. But I want to see exactly how hard they push him. I want to see what the offense looks like, how much more or less or the same we get of running the offense through Joel. But it's a big topic for good reason, right? Like they are saying from day one, we are going to be very deliberate with Joel and how we manage him. And that extends to the very first practice of training camp.
Yeah, and with the weight loss, he looked okay. Sometimes with Joel, it's tough to tell if he's lost 5 or 10 pounds or 25 or 30 pounds. But the key will really come when we see him move. But it's not even really so much like, it's one thing to be, all right, we need him to play at a lighter weight to try to, withstand the rigors of the playoffs. It's also about the energy that he has to expend. Certainly there's risk mitigation in terms of injury. But so many of the injuries have been random and fluke that you can't, it's mitigation. It's not cutting it to zero, but it's, keeping him when he has to play 40 minutes per night, being light on his feet, that he has more to give in the 35th, 37th, 39th, 40th minute in there. And Daryl was on our show yesterday. Devon, you were there talking to him. Of course, Daryl came on when Kyle and I weren't there, the coward that he is. That's fine. We're happy that he came on. But if you haven't listened to that interview,
I'm so glad that you said it. Come on, Daryl. I appreciate you came on the show, but come on, man.
If you haven't seen that, go to PHLY Sports on YouTube. It is posted up there. But he was talking about how, being lighter on his feet and getting him so that he's ready for April is the focus. And that lighter players tend to last longer in their career. They tend to be healthier. They tend to, like I said, have more to give when it is deep in a playoff run. And I think it's all good. And sort of to tie this back into the rebounding conversation we had to open up the show, I frequently said that when Joel Embiid gets tired, the first area you see a real impact in that is on the rebounding, is on his ability to pursue rebounds that aren't necessarily coming right to him, to go out of the zone. So when we're talking about fixing the rebounding problems, it's not just, hey, Andre Drummond, or maybe Caleb Martin can make a contribution, or if Ricky improves enough offensively, get in rotation, he would help the rebounding problem. It's also Joel Embiid, playing at close to his 90th percentile more often, rather than maybe the 50 or 60th percentile, because he is tired.
One of the things that he also pointed out yesterday was not worried about the All-Star, not worried about All-NBA, not worried about any of those individual things, to your guys' point of making sure that, again, he does everything within his power to position himself to be there. And he specifically mentioned April, May, and June. He's always played into May. We've seen him mid-May. We've experienced that with Game 7s. The issue is we haven't seen the end of May and certainly into June. And in order for him to do that, again, it begins now. We cannot overstate how important it is to start to begin with these good habits and getting these things in there right now with that. So if it begins with the weight loss so far, all for it. He said he needs to lose some more. Okay, cool. I don't know how much more he needs to lose, but if he says it and he feels like it's not going to disrupt his flow and his style of play, then have at it. If it's going to make his knees feel that much better, where he's not carrying too much weight, putting too much pressure on his knees, again, have at it and do your thing. It's about the showing now, the talking and all of that stuff. We've seen it. We've heard it. We've been there with it all. And now it's about showing it. So if he's going to first and foremost come in and drop the weight and allow us to see that, then great. Then everything else then has to follow. I mean, I don't know how you guys felt when you walked into the gym. Was he still on the floor? Was he doing some shooting drills? At that point, I saw him at the end where he had ice on his knees, but I don't know how you guys felt he looked, at least from the last time you saw him in person, not just Team USA, but see him in the last time in person for that Game 6 against New York.
We all silly like the mayor.